All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming today. Today we have another one of our If Alphas Could Talk gatherings. We're here at the LeMay Museum in Tacoma, Washington. We're also enjoying the last couple of months of the Alfa Romeo exhibit that's upstairs. So if you have not seen that, make sure today before you leave, you wander by. And if you're online, make sure that you get a chance to come by, check it out between now and August 20, be late in August this year, 2022. So today, our topic of choice is going to be about the future of Alfa. Now, it's not factual exactly, because I don't think too many of us know the exact future of Alfa Romeo. So we're just going to enjoy the discussion of Alfa Romeos and what they might be and how it's going to affect Alfisti as we go forward. So let's go ahead and switch to the next slide. So honestly, none of us really know what the future is truly going to hold. Since the talk is recorded, the joy of this is that, you know, I can pontificate all I want about what may happen or what should happen or what will happen. Then in a year or two or three or four, we can go back and look at that on the LeMay Museum's YouTube channel, and we can laugh at ourselves for the crazy things we were thinking, or we might be able to pat ourselves on the back for some of the clever things that we actually realized in advance. So that's one of the joys to this. The trick is that we could also just go get a dartboard, put up some random ideas of what might happen, throw darts at it, and it may be every bit as exact and accurate as my educated guesses are going to be. So it's just going to be fun. The nice thing is I'm going to let you also have some choices on what you forecast. What do you think is going to happen to Alfa Romeos going forward? So slide over to this slide number 3. Alfa is, they've handled changing landscapes many times in the past. For the last 100 years, they've been challenged with all sorts of things along the way. So if you look back at some of their visionary moments, you can see among them things like they were the first company to actually adopt variable valve timing in production cars, and they put it in 1980. The mechanical version didn't work quite as well as the electronic version, which they adopted 3 years later. But the idea is they were the first to really adopt that in production cars. Modern retractable hardtops, you see that on all sorts of low-end cars to high-end cars. But Alfa in the 90s designed that, put that onto a Proteo show car, and it was a clever little design. And yet now it's commonplace. Bertone, and of course the BAT cars, the BAT cars. Oh my gosh, those things were amazing aerodynamic wonders. And you still look at modern cars today that struggle to achieve aerodynamic numbers close to what those things did. So there's been times that Alfa and its partners have come up with some creative things. The Alfa 4C, you have an Alfa 4C driver in this room right now. The Alfa 4C and the 33 Stradale were both pretty impressive cars because they were short, small run, exotic cars. And luckily, the 4C was priced in a way that humans could afford it, as opposed to the 33 Stradale, which were out of this ballpark. Hemispherical combustion chambers. Alfa Romeo knew what that was and has for years. Dodge is a latecomer with those things. So they claim to be the big boys around with their Hemi engines, but we know the truth. We're all Alfisti. We've had Hemi engines for a long time. So let's sneak over to slide 4. Now Alfa, over all those years, they've made plenty of great choices, but they've also made some bad choices. So what we're trying to figure out here is, what choices are Alfa going to make going forward? Are they going to make another choice like they did when they partnered with Nissan and produced the Arna? The Arna was a car that not only did hardly anybody buy, but even those few people that did will never admit it today. They were horrible little cars. But also Alfa, another great choice they made, which I'll never understand, is that they decided to retire the Alfa Spider, a car that had been so successful for so long. car that still is loved to this day. That Alfa Spider was retired in the early 90s. Rather than rethink it, rather than do it, they retired it and said nobody would buy a small little open two-door sports car. That's just not going to happen. And yet Mazda at the exact same time, who's never been in the sports car business, launches the Miata. And that car has now become the most prolific two-door sports car on the planet. So clearly there was a market for it. And so what we're going to question today is, what's Alfa going to do going forward? Are they going to follow some of their early good choices that they made, or are they going to follow some of their other questionable choices? We don't know. I'm not putting my money on it yet, but that's the basis for the things like an educated decision as to what are they going to do. So sliding over to slide number 5. So the problem is Alfa Romeo is no longer its own company. They're part of a larger corporation, a very large corporation, Stellantis. Now Stellantis, you could say, well, let's look at their history of decision making, what they've done, give us a hint as to what's going to happen in the future. But Stellantis was just created in 2019, so they don't have a great history. So instead, you can start looking at some of their the predecessor, which was PSA, the Peugeot group. But if you look at Peugeot and you look at all those cars, I may be a little biased. I don't see anything extremely exciting jumping off that screen. I don't see anything saying, oh man, do they make great choices. So now I'm nervous because you're not sure what Alfa's going to do. And you're even more now nervous because you're not sure what the Peugeot group or the Stellantis group is going to do. But if we slide over to slide number 6, so when you look at PSA, the Peugeot group in the 80s, does anybody remember Chrysler Europe? I mean, Chrysler Europe, they acquired at one point. It had Talbot, Roots, Simca, Hillman, all within that little group. They weren't making any money, and Chrysler sold it for $1. So did anything come of that? No. So you look at those older decisions that PSA made. I mean, the closest thing we can remember to a car from that era, from that group, was the Chrysler Horizon that was sold in this country that looked a little like a Volkswagen Golf, but wasn't quite as nice as a Volkswagen Golf. So I guess what I'm saying is the roots going back in PSA don't do much to give you confidence. Into the 2012 to 2014 window, they signed a partnership with GM, and that went so poorly, GM jumped out and the French government had to bail out PSA. Okay, so now I'm even more nervous about what's going to happen in the future for cars because we are in a tough transitional time. Now, the good little side is that when Opel and Vauxhall sold to PSA, they did turn a profit. Both those companies now are actually selling more cars and making money for their company. So if that's the case, that is finally we have a positive spin coming into this little picture of corporate ownership. And I will say that Stellantis in a speech earlier this year said, hey, I'm going to give Alfa and all the other lines here a 10-year window to make profit, to figure out where we're going. And so theoretically, Alfa Romeo at least has a future plan from now till 2032. We'll see what they do with it. But again, we'll be talking about what types of things they might be doing. So since we're still hanging on the corporate side, let's say, can corporate leadership make a difference? So on slide 7, we can think about Carlos Tavares. He's the CEO of Stellantis. He loves racing. He used to race cars himself, not professionally, but he used to race cars for the fun of it, club race type things. But he also loves corporate mergers. He loves platform sharing. He loves those things every bit as much as he did racing. So the question is, which one of those three is going to win out in his heart? Is he going to keep the sporting side of Alfa Romeo strong? Sitting next to him at times in meetings is John Elkann. John Elkann is the grandson of Gianni Agnelli. He's a car guy through and through. He controls a 14% stake in the company. He's the largest shareholder in the company now of Stellantis. He is completely focused on cars, well, and sailboats, cars and sailboats. He likes them both. So I'm hoping, again, in this case, the car side of him wins out. And last but not least, in this little picture, we have Jean-Philippe Imparto. He is Alfa's CEO. Now, he's been in the car business. He's been an executive for a variety of companies, Citroën and Renault, Peugeot, all these things for a while. 30 years now he's been there. So the question is also, how will he influence it? So these people will be making the high-end corporate decisions for the future of our Alfa. And I am hoping upon hope that the car side of these people comes into play. But there's nothing here that absolutely convinces me that they will. Now, to John Elkann's strength, he's the one that did bring in Sergio Marchionne to Alfa Romeo. He's the one that made sure that happened. Now, I may not personally have liked Sergio, but what Sergio did was keep our mark alive. He did bring money to that line in the food chain. So the Alfa Romeos spent money developing the Julian. So I may not have agreed with everything that Marchionne did, but he saved our cars. And John Elkann was the guy that helped bring that together. So I guess the question then here is, as we think about this, how many people are suicidal at this point because of what I've just said about the corporate side? What are your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts? Do you have any concerns? Do you have any ideas? So at this point, if you share something with me, I'll probably have to repeat it so that the people will hear it online. But do you have any thoughts you want to share about the corporate side or fear?
Yeah, well, I have a new Alfa Romeo Stelvio.
Yeah, you have a new Alfa Stelvio. Cool, great.
The fancy one, not the horsey
Huh.
one. And
Okay.
an old Ferrari Spider. I'm good. I don't care
So
what they
so you're covered because you have an old Spider and a nice new Stelvio. So you've got both ends of the spectrum, the new and the old covered. And
I advise everybody else to do the same thing.
so you're hedging your bets at this point.
No, I'm
You're
all
saying,
I'm totally all in. I don't ever hit.
oh my Lord, I love it. So very good, nice. Hiding in the back.
So I remember reading here a couple weeks ago, it was probably Hagerty, and they made a comment that corporate leadership over all of those brands was going to let each of those brands do what they were good at.
Run with their specialty.
Yeah, so like in the instance of Alfa Romeo, I think they were going to focus more on sports cars than the SUV.
Yep. So the comment was to say that there was an announcement that the Stellantis Corporation was going to allow each of the car brands to follow their own specialties and their own strengths, and let them practice what they're good at. So I love the idea of that. And in the old days, before it was Stellantis, back when it was just FCA, there were political directors for each car line that would actually get in there and argue to keep their piece clean. And that was as close as they could get to that kind of a game, where this Alfa says, no, this is absolutely an Alfa specialty. This needs to stay an Alfa. But the hard part is, in this day and age, when you look at something like Porsche sells lots of cars. And then all of a sudden they come out with an SUV and they now double their sales. So you kind of go, dang, you have to be in that market. So even if somebody doesn't want to go in that market, you have to do it. Same thing goes with electric cars or with other things. So as you look at this future and this changing market, if you let Alfa or Lancia or any of these groups within the group go their own way, they might take you down an evil path for far too long and cost you and the taxpayers and that brand its future. So I love the idea that they're going to let them do it, but I have a feeling that rope is really short and they'll only let them take one or two steps that way before they yank it right back. So
I think the thought was to keep competition
between them,
minimized so that they,
Yeah.
had a range of cars over the group rather than everybody making SUVs under the same umbrella that competed with each
Right.
other.
So what's funny was in the old days with the political directors, their job was to make sure they actually competed sort of with each other. They actually went out of their way to make a car that was better than that guy's car, even though they're part of the family. So maybe the idea would be behind that comment would be for them, for the corporation to adjust those guys' priority and let them get along a little better and understand that sharing is caring. I mean, I don't know. It's, I mean, there is plenty of room for platform sharing. And that is one of the great successes to mergers like this is the ability to platform share, technology share. And it's not like that's a brand new invention. That's been going on for a long, long time. It's just to a larger degree. And we'll touch on that a little bit more as we go forward. So we'll see. It'll be fun to see how this plays out. We'll see how that comment is from the corporate side. Do they let them get out very far? Or do you hear that sound of that chain starting to yank as they pull them back in? So, all right, well, let's sneak over to slide number 8. There's definitely no doubt that the entire automotive industry is rapidly changing right now. Between the environmental focus to fuel prices, to safety, to customer expectations, the changes are happening across the industry just as things changed when horses started being retired and cars came along, and it was just a huge change in how we did transportation, everything from farm equipment to everything, huge change. So today we have things like Toyota with its Mirai and the Honda Clarity, which are the hydrogen powered cars. It's a clever idea, and it's actually got a wonderful minimal byproduct. So it's a very cool thing. And the only challenge is, since it's a test product, they're only doing it in California, Southern California. There's only 46 gas stations, and they usually have one pump at each gas station. So if you show up and there's like 6 cars in front of you, well, it takes about 5 to 6 minutes to fill a hydrogen tank on a car. So think about if there's 6 cars back, you're gonna be there for half an hour. You're gonna be waiting a while. So that kind of thing is a challenge right now. But again, this is just in the test phase, but it's a great thing. But the problem is Alfa Romeo is certainly not focusing on that as a solution, because that's a high risk adventure. That's minimal chance they're going to adopt it going forward. Electricity is the far more easily adoptable process, and so many other people are investing in it that you're not going to see Alfa doing the hydrogen. But it's a clever idea. It'll be funny if we look back 100 years from now and go, man, what were we thinking? We jumped on this one. We should have done that. But electric and hybrid are the main focus for almost every car manufacturer out there. I mean, it's hard to think of a single brand that is not doing it. So it's actually kind of funny that Alfa is a slither behind the game on this one. Do we all know the difference between electric cars and hybrid cars? I just want to make sure we're clear. An electric car, an EV, is a fully electric car. It plugs into the wall. It just charged up. You drive it on battery power. Where a hybrid is a car that has different degrees of power from a gas engine and electric engine. So it might drive down the road on the battery until the batteries get somewhat low, and then it shifts seamlessly over to the small gas motor and keeps powering you down the road while it's charging up the batteries. So yes, hybrid cars of all can be plugged in as well, but the key here is as we go forward, we're going to look at some of the differences in some of these cars are hybrid, but the focus is the gas engine with a little boost from the electric. Other ones, it's the electric motor, like a Prius, for example. They want you to drive on the electric as much as possible. It's not a performance car, it's a driving car. And so you drive on the electric motor, and the gas motor is just to help keep you going when the batteries go low. So we'll see a couple more of those. So let's slide over to the next slide. So electric cars, just typical example of electric cars. There's countless great ones out there. I mean, and we're not talking just boring cars. When electric cars first came out, you know, we always saw them as those boring or dorky looking cars. But now you've got things like the Audi e-tron and the Porsche Taycan that are on the same platform. So again, they've shared the technology, so they designed this platform to be completely electric, even though the Taycan has turbo and turbo S options. Kind of funny. It's a trim level, but still. BMW, Chevy has their Bolt EV. They've got Lucid Air, which is an amazing car. Mercedes has cars. I mean, all these people have variety of great cars they're putting together. The range is getting better as time goes on. That's battery technology, car design, and stuff like that. If you go to the next slide, now we're talking about hybrids. And so hybrids, just again, there's a huge number of hybrids out there. So Honda's got the Insight, the Accord, the CR-V. Hyundai's got multiple. Toyota's got actually more than just RAV4. There's a variety of different cars, almost every maker out there. I ran into a person last weekend with a Ford Maverick, and he's a good old farm guy, and he looked like a farm guy. He spoke like a farm guy, and we were in farm country. And I said, "How do you like your Ford Maverick?" "I love it. Gets 42 miles per gallon." And and it's just funny to actually have somebody enjoying a vehicle that they're using on the roads and on their farm. And yet it's a complete different, venture into trucks than what we've had up to this point. I mean, trucks had to be big and powerful, and he's got himself a little electric, hybrid truck. So anyway, very, very cool. How many people in this room, no, the 4C driver does not have to raise his hand, but how many people in this room actually drive an EV or a hybrid today, or have driven one this time? So I see a hand there. I see another one hiding over there. So cool. They're not horrible to drive. They're just not usually as exciting. But when you get to the next slide, we're going to go to the next slide here. Our cousins over at Ferrari, they've transitioned to hybrid with the LaFerrari originally. It actually doesn't have a traditional electric motor in it. It's got a massive V12 motor, but it does the same type of thing that Formula One cars do, as it recovers energy from the speed you're going, from the slowing down, and it helps boost the engine's output. But it doesn't use an extra electric motor to do that. It's just feeding to the motor itself. So the trick is now they've transitioned to the SF90 and the 296 GTB. The cool part about those cars, those things are very powerful gas motors, and they have electric motors. These things are blisteringly fast. The SF90 is every bit as fast as that big V12 LaFerrari. So if you think about, we'll touch on the 296 GTB. It's got a V6 motor, twin turbocharged. That motor is not all that big. It's a small motor. That motor is putting out 654 horsepower. But because of the fact that it's got two little electric motors helping boost the drive, these are actually hooked to the drive on the car, it adds another 164 horsepower. So it brings that car to 818 horsepower. And yet you're driving a car with a V6. So that's where the hybrid mentality is no longer trying to say, hey, we're just going to have an efficient car. They're going to say, we're going to have an efficient, fast car. And so you really can have fun with these cars. So there is a future for this kind of thing. And I picture, if Ferrari can do this today, why doesn't Alfa do this tomorrow or the next day? And the answer is they can. They very easily can. So the SF90, I might add, it also has a twin turbocharged engine, but it's a V8. And instead of just two little electric motors, it has three electric motors, and it actually gives it all-wheel drive. Whereas that 296, that was rear-wheel drive. So you can go out and spin your tires, slide around in parking lots and have fun. But that SF90 has 1,000 horsepower when you combine those two things. So, and the last oddity about the SF90 is it doesn't have a reverse gear. because they go, why put it in reverse? That's an extra burden and weight to the transmission. If you want to back up, as soon as you hit the R button on your console, the SF90 shuts the V8 engine off and the electric motor comes on and runs in reverse and just backs you up. It's like, that is the weirdest thing. You cannot back it up with any noise. It's going to back up quietly no matter what you do. So I just think it's kind of fun that they come up with this application of this technology and they apply it to make these cars fun. And so that is what, big dollar budgets can do. And of course, as a buyer, you're going to pay that fee. You're going to spend your hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to get that SF90. But in the future, in the near future, we're going to see that same thing added to what we deem to be sports sedans and sports cars. So as I get done saying all that, I think to myself, maybe the chances for Alfa having a fun car going forward and have now started to come back up. I know I was depressing you a little earlier talking about the corporate side, but as I look at what Ferrari is able to do, and Porsche and other people are doing, yeah, Alfa's a little bit behind the game, but they already have a lesson right here. They can steal the idea and say, let's do our version of that. So yes, there is an opportunity in the future. Did I see a question hiding over here?
Well, just a
Or comment?
The engine in the 296
Yeah.
is prototyped and been used in the quadrifoglio accelerator.
I know it's completely different engine that's currently used, but
Twin turbo V6 with the heads laid wider so
Yep.
that they can get both turbochargers.
On- yeah, it's so
It's a Ferrari produced engine.
right. But both the quadrifoglio engines, the one that's in all the quadrifolios out there, is definitely a Ferrari derived engine, but definitely is different than the one that's in the 296 GTB. But it is because the 296 is really flat. I mean, we're talking, it's an extremely wide V. So very, very cool. But I love that they're sharing that technology. See, that's where staying in your brand channel would be bad because we wouldn't be able to get access to that. But that's where reaching in to families,
Because a
groups.
small company like Alfa may not be
So-
able to afford to.
That engine development cost is massive. And so yes, Alfa, especially if they're not making a huge amount of money these days, which they claim they aren't, then hey, it'd be great to borrow from somebody else's technology. Just pay them a piece of it, not the whole thing. So, all right, so we've seen what Ferrari's offering. So let's slide over to see what's Alfa offering. That's the slide number 12. And so Alfa's coming out with their first hybrid EV gas-powered car. It's the Alfa Romeo Tonale. And this is definitely a transition car. It is not the end goal car, but it is a phenomenal thing. I'm glad they're doing this. It's about time, because I may not necessarily love this car, but they need to practice. They need to get this out there. They need customers to use it and enjoy it. What makes transition cars like this so tough is that it has to, that chassis that it is, that platform that it's built on has to support hybrid setup. That means a gas engine and an electric engine and the batteries that go with it. They have to be fit in there somehow. Oh, and that same chassis has to hold it when you switch it to an EV, and it's just got 1 or 2 electric motors and a whole litany of batteries. Or it has to be able to support a gas engine. So that's a very tough ask. And the only way you can do that in this car is to compromise some. So I'm sure there's compromises in its overall performance, its own weight distribution, meaning that if a gas-powered car handles great, once they set it up for electric, handling might not be as good, because now the weight is no longer sitting in a fuel tank and sitting in the engine up in front. It's now engine there, a bunch of batteries along the middle, and the weight of all those batteries is going to affect that car's handling and performance. They're going to minimize it as best they can, but that's the challenge of a transition car like this. And so any of these makers that has made a car that you can go to the dealer and buy today that is a hybrid or gas or electric has faced this same challenge. But most of us can't follow Ferrari's path and say, hey, no compromises. Our customers are going to pay. If that's $500,000, they're going to pay. So Ferrari, if Alfa tried that, how many of us would pay $250,000 for an Alfa, sedan that, it'd be a limited number of us. But that's where Alfa has to grow into this market. They have to practice on this car. They have to get the customers to transition. And then once they're ready, then they can then say, okay, now we're going to make a car that is just EV or just hybrid. And then keep working towards that design that is an ultimate version of an electric car rather than a transition version. So Alfa's market does require compromise. And I recognize that, even if I hate to compromise. So the next slide, I do love that Alfa Romeo takes a look at the car and they say, well, look, see, our new car has something to do in common with the old Alfas. And I don't know how much they're remembering the old Alfas, but they found something. They found this little body line is kind of similar. Kind of similar. So I like it. I'll take it. I'll give Alfa credit. The new people at Alfa, they know what a GTV is. If not before, at least when they saw this slide, they said, what the hell? Oh, that's one of ours. So bless it to be whoever created this image. I like them because they are educating Alfisti at the factory. So, all right. So we sneak over to the next slide. So the neat trick is that same platform, because we're sharing things, is going to be used for the Jeep Renegade. Now, when you hear people talk about platform sharing, it doesn't mean they're going to put the same brakes and the same steering and the same suspension. No. They're going to, each place gets to tweak their own, but they have some limited parameters they have to work within because this platform is the same. Everything bolts to that platform. And you design around that platform. So the Jeep Renegade will be out. It won't look like the Tonale. It may have a few overlapping parts. All the unimportant things like heaters, cooling systems, and who knows what, safety features may all overlap. But when it comes to performance, we are going to put our money on the fact that they're going to put a whole lot more fun into the Tonale than they do the Jeep. But it is a different car for a slightly different market. So don't trade in your 4C on a Tonale right away. Just hold on to it a little longer. So sneaking over to the next slide. This is kind of fun. Stellantis and Alfa Romeo have committed that by 2027, they're going to be fully electric on the fleet. Now, that is kind of exciting in some ways, but it also can scare you a little bit. But the nice news is that if it scares you, don't worry. Alfa has never been on time with a launch of anything in their life. So we have at least until what, 2030, maybe 2032, 33? 2035, we had a 2030. Do we hear 2036? So we'll just have to see what it is. Yeah. So the trick is that we have to look at the fact that this market that they're going after is, yes, America is a very important market, but their market is all across this planet. And Stellantis is no fool. They have a 7% ownership by a Chinese company that likes to make all Stellantis cars in China. So they also see the market in those countries. So they're looking across this planet for customers. The Tonale may be a small seller in this country, but it might be a huge seller in China, or it might be a huge seller in places in Europe or wherever. So I'm hoping that they are doing their research and they're figuring this out. And whatever they learn on the Tonale will be able to be applied to the next generation of Giulia. That's my gamble. So. So yeah, both Ferrari and Maserati have both announced that the latest version of their big engine or their last. They say they're not developing anymore. They've basically run that gamut. They just know that the industry is changing, the market is changing, and they can achieve with smaller engines and with hybrids what they were achieving with the big, large V12s and large V8s and stuff. So that's why that Ferrari 296 is actually so cool, because it's such a small V6 motor, and yet, man, it's 818 horsepower, and that's kind of cool. That's pretty darn good horsepower coming out of there. So very, very fun.
Maserati just produced a Porsche killer,
The MC20,
whatever it is.
yeah.
And it didn't fare too bad. So that apparently is where they're headed, but that will almost surely be.
So we're chatting about the Maserati had just came out with the last or the latest exotic car type thing. It's the Maserati MC20, phenomenal car. I just spent last weekend chasing one down a muddy road, getting it all dirty. It was pretty cool. But the phenomenal cars. But this is not a big engine. It's a small engine car. And so that is sort of the direction that all these guys are going, because of the changes in the technology and the changes in the environment and people's expectations. So very, very cool to see. So then if we go to the next slide, the question is going to be, how's this going to affect racing in the world? Because racing is one of the reasons we like our cars. It's whether we like to drive them ourselves or because we like to watch them. Tomorrow is a Formula One race, and we'll be rooting for our cars that say Alfa Romeo on them. So on the racetrack, Formula One is already sort of tapping into the hybrid technology. They use it to reclaim energy. Every time they brake, they slow down. And there's numerous cars in society now that are doing that same kind of thing, that are adopting the same technology. The energy recovery systems work, and then they boost the engine performance as soon as they come out of that corner. So the cars have a little bit more. It's not the same as fully hybrid or electric boost. These cars don't carry big batteries. Formula One cars don't have big batteries. But they're working to be fully hybrid by 2025. So we're going to see this technology that is being adopted for street cars, for sports cars, for performance cars, and exotic cars. We're seeing it in the racing world as well. They're trying to make sure they do it right so that they don't stumble over themselves. So they gave themselves a realistic target, and they all think they can make 2025 as the year that all the cars will roll out as honest hybrids. They're pushing hard to get battery packs that will actually be much lighter and much more powerful. What is it called? The new lithium sulfide or sulfur batteries are something like 3 times as powerful for the same weight as what the existing lithium batteries are. And I'm not a battery guy, so I can't tell you what and why that is. But the trick is that kind of technology is changing rapidly. So when you look at Formula E is already fully electric. And there's already a whole series that they run around and race in. They even now are enjoying all-wheel drive on their cars because they're putting a small electric motor up front and a electric motor in back. And so, yeah, it's way too quiet. As we listen to those cars, they go whoosh by. Oh my gosh, it doesn't sound good. It's like, what is that sound? So now with time, we get used to noises. There's, some people like the sounds of weird things. And so who knows? Some kind of cards in the spokes might be a start, but I don't know. The issue is there's got to be some, but I do believe with time we'll get used to it and we'll overlook that odd sound and we'll just appreciate the speed, the handling, the design, the driver, all those things we enjoy now. We'll just have to overcome that sound problem. But we see, even at our local club track events, we see more and more Teslas or Ford Mach-E's show up and run at the lapping events. And these aren't races, these are just club racers having fun, going out and just trying to beat their own time around the track. And yeah, the car may use up all of its energy because it's got it in hyper mode or whatever the craziest mode is for that vehicle. So yeah, it's got its challenges, but by the same token, we're seeing more and more of it. So clearly this technology is coming our way. We can't avoid it. So this is why I say I'm happy that Alfa is finally getting around to this, because it needs to happen. It is the direction that our world and our automotive cycles are going in. So slide number 17. The other fun thing is autonomous cars. Alfa Romeo is working on autonomous cars, not very well. What they've come up with so far is they call it the ADAS, their Advanced Driver Assistance Systems. It's basically the same thing you can get in a lot of other cars, where lane departure warnings and controls that'll help keep the car within the lanes, auto braking systems, parking, it'll help park your car, it'll help you, all the stopping things. So if you're in traffic, it'll set your speed to follow the car in front of you, probably. All those things, that's what they've figured out so far. It is going to be a long time. And when I say long time, I don't know if that means 5 years or if it means 10 years. I don't know how long it's going to be before we really have figured out how to make autonomous cars drive properly and safely. It is probably not going to be done by Alfa or Stellantis. It's probably going to be another company that really specializes in this, that is tech savvy, that is taking that risk and that liability on, and they are going to develop it. Just like navigation systems in cars were not developed by the car company, they were developed by somebody else. Phones and electronic systems and all these things in these cars were not developed by Ferrari or Alfa Romeo or Porsche or any, they were developed by other companies. So I am 99% positive autonomous cars will be created by somebody, and they will then be bought by, the systems and tools will be bought by each of the manufacturers to apply. But we still have time to ignore that, or not worry about it getting in the way of our having fun in our cars on the road. I think that we'll see, it's my forecast, it's only my forecast. But I think that what we're going to see is that there's going to be certain roads, like major highways and freeways, that will have, they'll be open only to autonomous cars. It may not be for another 10 or 15 years, but let's say 15 years from now, they say, nope, this freeway during rush hour is only autonomous cars. Because by putting autonomous cars on there, we can get twice as many cars on that road because they'll flow together. And no, you can't enter there if you're driving by yourself or when you have your own car. And so that is going to be a challenge. But okay, you can't ride your horse on the freeway either. You can't, there's times we had to be limited that you can't do what you used to do. But I think there'll always be the opportunity to drive our cars on those back roads and those other roads that are separate. It's just, there'll be some limitations placed upon us. So I do think that it's just something we'll have to see going forward. I don't hate autonomous cars. I think they are phenomenal for people being able to commute to and from work or go certain boring places. I just don't want to drive them. I want to drive my car. And that's all I want to make sure we do, is make sure that we make it right for everybody else by giving them the cars that get them there, and then make it right for me and all of you to enjoy the cars that you have and you've always enjoyed. So I think that's our future. I really do. It'll also help on that following distance, because I'm tired of driving to work and looking in the mirror and seeing somebody tailgating me. And it just makes me nervous and my stress level goes up. So an autonomous car is going to protect its owner. It's not going to do that. It's going to stay back a little ways, especially when I brake check it a couple of times and that guy spills his wine. But that's a whole nother story. That would be a talk in a different day. So, all right, we'll sneak over to the next slide though. So the next slide here, vintage cars. Now, I know I love my vintage cars. I have the luxury of getting to drive quite a few wonderful vintage cars, including Jag XK120s and XK140s. I think they're all great cars. There is a company in England, Lunaz Group, that produces, I mean, they have a huge warehouse filled with cars that are in process of being converted from traditional gas engines over to brand new state-of-the-art electronics and batteries, electric motors. And it is absolutely amazing what they produce. It may not be for you or for me, but it's very cool, because then what you see is you'll see these cars on the road. You'll see old Rolls Royces, old Bentleys, weird old Hillman Minxes. You'd see whatever a person wants, they can convert it to being an electric car, and you can enjoy it. And there was one of the Royals who got married a little while ago, a year or so ago. And when they left the wedding, they went out and climbed into their beautiful Jag E-Type. It was a beautiful silvery blue. And it was electric. And they drove away. Came from these guys. So phenomenal stuff. But if you think that's cool, I hate to say this, let's go to the next slide. There is Totem Automobili in Italy, makes GTVs into Restro Mod. This is a 500 horsepower GTV. So they take original GTVs, they look for ones that are worn out, they then gut them, and they strengthen everything, because they go, there's no way that car could hold up to 518 horsepower. So they have to re-strengthen that car completely, and then they have to add battery packs and everything to it. But they sell an Alfa GTV that we can buy. So what does the future hold for us? Well, it could be an Alfa Tonale. It could be a Giulia that we could have, that's the next iteration of Giulias that are all electric, and they're not designed to be a gas hybrid type thing and a EV. No, it's designed to be just electric or just hybrid. We'll see other things. The market is demanding a large SUV. So Stellantis has said, hey, we'll give you another large SUV, but it's going to be electric. Since everybody else is making them, I mean, even Rivian's coming out with they just came out with their truck, and now they've got a new SUV just showing up. So big SUVs are all the rage. They get a lot of, you don't have to worry about the mileage. The things have good mileage. They're all electric. So we're going to see that kind of thing. We're going to see Alfa Romeo's hybrid race cars in Formula One. We're going to see more and more electric cars out on our track days. We're still going to see many of us driving our traditional sports cars and having fun with them. And we're even going to see a couple of these crazy things every once in a while in this country. I may not have seen one yet, but I know that it's just a matter of time when one of the people in this area, we have a high-tech area with a lot of people, a lot of money. I know that one of these people is going to bring one of these over here. I'm going to thank him for that, because I want to see it in person. It's a pretty cool car. And so, unfortunately, last I knew, I think this was like $600,000 for this car. So don't expect it to be very common. You're not going to see it every day on your way to work. But you know, a person could go out and buy a brand new Ferrari SF90, or they could buy this. And an Alfisti would go to this. Well, might. I can't speak for them all. So, all right. So we sneak over to one more slide. Well, two more slides technically, but one more slide. And that is, I just want to sum up by saying, guys, change is always a tough thing to face. It always is. It's just not our norm. We're used to doing something. Anytime you move the silverware from this drawer to that drawer, it's tough on us. So change is always a little bit of a challenge, but change can be good. And you know, I wish I could have said that, oh yeah, I have all the confidence in the world that we're going to see the Alfas we want to see. I am not all that confident. I think that there's a chance, but I'm nervous that from a profit standpoint, we may not see it, and the Alfa will struggle and not satisfy Stellantis's needs. But there's other options for us, and there will be some fun things to come. If nothing else, well, then we have to go buy a new Ferrari. And if we can't afford one, we'll see if we can find somebody in the audience here who will buy us a Ferrari, and then we'll just share it. Now, I don't see anybody raising their hands here to volunteer to do that for us. Oh, damn it. All right, so point is, change is going to happen. it can be good. Let's try and make sure it is good for us. Loss of how we've always done it is always tough to deal with, but we are going to have to lose some of that, what we've always done. Change is often, there's things about safety that we have to just incorporate when we realize that, oh my God, we survived all these years without wearing a helmet. In a car, we wore a leather strap. Wow, these helmets are so much better. And then as helmets technology improves, oh, there's a Hans device. So change, sometimes change comes along slowly, and we realize it's actually for good and it's for safety. Because now when you watch so many cars crash, we survive them. People crash, and there's so much better chances in both racing and on the street. So accept some of that change. It's for the safety. It also might help the environment. Now, I can't say that modern day electric cars today help the environment. I think the fact is they don't, because of the rare earth and the minerals that have to be mined to make everything from the batteries to the control units. The fact that these things don't last very long, they then aren't recycled very well. None of this is environmentally friendly today, but just like horses pooping in the street, the issue is there's ways to get around it and to fix it. There are ways. That may be what we do today, but as we transition and we start figuring out, no, you can shovel it. Oh, no, you can clean this. Oh, we can have street sweepers. There's ways to improve this process, and it will happen. Even if it hasn't happened yet, it will happen. So I'm going to have faith that it's going to help the environment on this change. Takes work. Yeah, it does take work to change. It's hard on me. It's hard on all of us at times, but the issue is it's worth doing on these things. And then a lot of times, a lot of these cars are not going to be all that impressive on the first go around. And we're going to have to laugh at them and say, yeah, that was a joke. I'm not a big Prius fan. I mean, people may like them. But luckily, I don't have to buy that car. I see that as a practice car because Toyota's next thing or something is better. And the next car is better. So even if Alfa Romeo puts out the Tonale, and even if it gets some good reviews from Consumer Reports and bad reviews from all the car magazines, we don't know. I'm just guessing. The idea is if that happens, you have to look at it as this is their first try. This is their practice. This is their transition car. And that the next version that they come out with will be better. Alfa has improved and changed all the way along as I can think. There's no reason why they can't going forward. The only question is, will they do it fast enough to keep Stellantis happy? And will it still be around? I say, yeah, for 10 years. After that, my money's back off the table. So I'll have to wait and see on that one. So, all right, so let's go to our little last slide. And this is just to say, hey, thank you everybody for coming today. Thank you for being online. Thank you for watching this on YouTube, the LeMay YouTube channel. Also, for everybody who's here, there's free Hot Wheels Matchbox cars up here that are all Alfa Romeos, just because I appreciate you coming today. But if you didn't show up and you watched it online, just go to the local store and find your own Matchbox Hot Wheels cars. They're all good. All of them are Hot Wheels as far as I'm concerned. They're all good. All righty, guys. Thank you very much. Have a great day.